Good afternoon, everybody. I can see there's a few people kind of slowly trickling into the webinar, and hopefully you can all hear me. And you can also see the slide titled Achieving ISO 27001. I'm going to kind of get on with the kind of introductions and the preamble while people are still joining us. Thank you to all those people who have joined us. My name is Chris Booth. I work for ITHealth. Most of you will probably know me. I've been with the company now for about 15 years and have kind of worked through the history of us developing what we now know and love as our ITHealth dashboard, which I'm going to share with you in its new guise a little bit later on. This webinar was formed from a user forum that we ran a few months ago when one of our long-standing customers, that being Clatterbridge, and I'll introduce Andy in a second, we're talking about how they had gone through ISO 27001 and achieved that, and had used some of the features in the dashboard to support that. And we thought it'd be a great idea to share their story with a wider audience, some customers, some people who know of us but don't have the solution in place. But either way, it's equally valuable. So hopefully this is going to be informative and educational, and hopefully the technology will hold up and my slides will transition. I said I'm Chris Booth from ITHealth, joined by Andy from Clatterbridge. Andy, did you want to do a quick intro, please?
Yep. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Andy Kilbane. I'm the digital system security specialist at Clatterbridge. So I was involved in our ISO 27001 journey, and I've been asked at the last minute to fill in for our IT security manager who's currently off unwell. So I'll do my best and we'll get you through, but feel free to ask as many questions as you want, and if I can answer them, I will.
I'm sure you'll be absolutely brilliant, Andy. Yeah, and our best wishes to okay, so just by way of introduction, for those of you that know us, you'll be familiar with this kind of approach, but those of you that don't, so we've been in the business now for about 30 years supporting NHS, predominantly NHS customers, and these are the kind of things we do on a day-to-day basis. We pride ourselves on a lot of years of experience in this environment, and understanding not just the local requirements but also those that come in from the outside, from the centre, and all those influences that you need to deal with, understanding the pressures that you face and the challenges that kind of come up on a day-to-day basis. More than happy to talk to you about any of this kind of preamble or the detail afterwards. We do partner with quite a few organisations. We only will ever partner with one organisation of a particular kind of type of solution, and that's important to us. And when we do partner, we're interested in making that a complete turnkey approach wherever possible. Not just talking to you about a product, but talking to you about how it could be used locally and how it could affect you. And then we have two of our own products. One we're going to talk about in a bit more detail, that'll be in our dashboard. And the more long-standing one, which has been around for a long time now, is a product called Security multi-factor authentication, which of course is very vogue at the moment with regard to the recent communications from NHS. So I'm going to hand over to Andy to talk us through that journey, and then we'll go from there. But before I do that, if you've got any questions, please put them in the questions box. We'll take them in flight. That's probably the easiest, so I remember. And I should have mentioned at the end of it that we do run a survey, just helps us kind of formulate our future ones. Please, if you've got time to fill that in as you exit, that would be great. So anyway, Andy, over to you, my friend. I'll just bring up your first slide.
Okay. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm Andy. So obviously, I don't know how much people know about ISO 27001, but it's basically an international standard for implementing what they call an information security management system, which is essentially just a collection of all your policies in one place for everyone to look at. So I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, Chris.
Yep, will do.
So I've been asked, so why did we decide to do it? So obviously, it provides a systematic approach for people, or for us to manage our information security risks. It helps us identify and address vulnerabilities, obviously ensuring the magic CIA triangle for sensitive patient data, as well as, you know, finance data and other things. And I think the main thing with accreditation is it demonstrates a commitment from us, especially led by by the senior management team within Clatterbridge to maintain robust security practices and make sure that everything's safe. It was hoped, or it is hoped, that by adopting ISO 27001 we can promote a culture of resilience, constantly assessing risks, and continual improvements is one of the things you like to mention in ISO 27001. So, constant reviewing processes, constantly adapting, being aware of threats and trust and issues and things like that. And it places an iterative approach towards information security. So next slide, if you will. So Clatterbridge, we didn't do this on our own. We did engage with, first of all, we engaged with Greater Manchester Shared Services, who had ISO 27001 for their IT department. And they sent us quite a few bits to get us started. And then we also engaged with a company called Fortis, who we'd used before for Cyber Essentials Plus, and they helped us go through the process. So ISO setup made up of clauses, so 4 to 10 are what are defined as the mandatory requirements. So there's 7 defined requirements for the context of the organisation, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, improvements, and one other I can't remember. But then also on top of that, there's 116 annexes. So we did the 2013 version, I should say. So we are about to go through to 2023 where it's slightly changed. And what you do with these 116 Annex A objectives is you look at what you're going to consider, and then they all go into what's called a statement of applicability. It's probably the biggest part of going from not having ISO to having ISO. So most people will probably already have most of the policies and processes in place, but the SOA, that is basically your what's in scope, what do we do, what are we looking at, what are we going to be looking to improve, and that is a constant living document that will evolve and change. The development of the ISMS we use SharePoint for, so basically just a library where we put all the documents, as I mentioned earlier on, where everyone can see them, all the evidence for the security policies, your standards, your SOPs, your audit reports, your management reviews, and things like that. So we went through the DSOA, developed the ISMS, and then we started doing some internal audits, which were our stage 1 audits. So they were carried out between ourselves and Fortis to look at what we were going to be assessed on, and basically, will we make it through? Because there was no point in us going for certification if we weren't going to get through the phase 1 and phase 2 audits. So we went through that with Fortis, and they were good. You get things called either a major or a minor non-conformity, which is basically where you say you're doing something and you might not be doing it completely. So you can have as many minor non-conformities as you want and still get assessed and certified, but obviously the major non-conformities will be a fail. And then you have other things as well, which is an opportunity for improvement. So it might be that we're doing something, but the auditor looks at it and says, well, maybe if you did this a little bit differently. So one example was within DATIX that we use for risk management, we didn't consider the CIA triad because a lot of our risk management legacy stuff was more around clinical risk and not around IT risk. So obviously, because we were using it for IT risk, one of our OFIs was to maybe include the CIA triad in the DATIX risks. So we had the phase 1 audits. They were pretty good, and then the phase 2 audits are the big one. So that's where your BSIs or some of the other trusted bodies, LRQA is one that springs to mind, where they come in and they basically go through everything and then basically tell you on the day whether or not they're going to recommend you for certification. And then from there, you get awarded or go away and do some work and come back and get reassessed. So I think much if so we're on to the conclusion now, I think, Chris, on the next slide. So yeah, just to sum up, it is hard. It's not cheap. It's got to be bought in by the execs at the top. Otherwise BSI or your accreditation board will say, well, if managements aren't bought in, then you can't have it. You've got to be able to commit resources to it. It's hugely beneficial when submitting DSPT, meeting legal requirements. I know that CE and CE Plus clear some of the assertions for the DSPT, but I'm not sure there's anything in there at the moment for ISO, but that may change. Obviously, it helps safeguard reputation, stakeholder confidence. It massively increases the information security of the trust. And once we actually knew what we were doing, it was actually quite straightforward. But I would recommend that anyone who's doing it gets some help from someone who's gone through it before. You know, someone like Fortis or NTI or some of them other accreditations or certifying bodies. And then the last bit is really, you know, what did the dashboard do? So there's nothing specifically in there for ISO 27001, but the beauty of having the dashboard was it was able, you know, we were able to show what we were doing in relation to patching, what we were doing in relation to having an asset management system, that all our OSs were in support, that we were able to identify vulnerable software and the support software and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty much it for me. I think there's a few screenshots from I'm very old school, so I use the old dashboard, sorry Chris, but you know, basically these are some of the things that we were asked to show. So you got there, you know, your desktop patching, your server patching, and then I think there's one relating to, you know, versions of software, and all of this is really useful for the auditors to come in and just be able to look at it straight away and in real time. That's pretty much it for me, really, I think. So any questions? There's none in the chat box, so I've either bored you all or nobody wants to ask.
While people think about before I kind of move on to look at the kind of new aspects of the dashboard, there are a couple of things that struck me, Andy. You mentioned DSPT, and I think we all know we've been for a long time. That's kind of a once a year kind of assessment that we all have to do. We do it as well. This isn't, is it? This is an ongoing assessment that you are.
Yeah, so this is a continual assessment, and I think the difference to DSPT is you kind of mark your own homework. You know, you can put things in the DSPT to say this is what we're doing, and it's never really verified by anyone other than the people doing the DSPT. Whereas with this, we do have annual re-audits. So, you know, BSI or Fortis will be coming in a couple of times a year and doing audits on certain bits to make sure that we're still following all our policies and our processes to say we're doing what we're doing. And I think that is a big difference between ISO and the DSPT.
Yeah, I know. I mean, no
assertions.
Yeah, of course, and yeah, indeed. And we know, obviously, we know that the DSPT is likely to change, I think, going forward in terms of being aligned with CAF and things like that. But obviously, in the meantime, that's there. Yeah, we've got one question that's coming now. I'll just read it out as it is. While there's clear reasoning behind what you're doing, what made the organisation choose ISO over frameworks such as NIST or SABSA?
So I did mention at the beginning of the call that was probably a conversation that was had with our IT security manager and our chief technology officer. But I think there was a desire to be the best at Clatterbridge, or the best that we can be, and I think it was felt that ISO would give us a really good standing within that sort of arena to say, you know, we've got this international standard, internationally recognised certification to say that, you know, we do the best we can with the data we've got, and we've got things in place to make sure that we keep it that way.
So I know you mentioned some of the questions coming. I know you mentioned Fortis. You also mentioned Greater Manchester Shared Service. I think they've gone through our 727. But did you mention another potential commercial partner as well?
So there's different certifying bodies. So we chose BSI because we already had a relationship with BSI through having ISO 9001. But there are other certification bodies you can use. LRQA is one. I think there's BM Trada might be another one. But I'm sure if you have a look on the ISO website, they'll tell you who you can pick to do your audits, really.
And a follow-up question to that one is, what was the size of the resource team that you used from the trust?
So we've got a team of 3, but it was mainly myself and Rich who were doing a lot of it. We did have a lot of hand-holding from Fortis going through. We also, because we're part of the Cheshire and Merseyside ICB, we had the regional cyber group. They all got together and put together quite a few standards and policies around what we'd need to do to tick the boxes for ISO. So it was kind of working out what we needed to do with all them policies and documents and where they fitted against the statements of applicability to say, this clause is met by this policy.
And I mean, that's a really good point you made. I know that the work that I've done with the Cheshire Merseyside group and the wider ICS as it is now, they're very keen to try and standardise their policies and standards across the ICS, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think they really helped us in the gaps that where we may not have considered that we needed a policy before, or our policy wasn't quite as detailed as it needed to be.
Yeah.
And then obviously the stuff we got from Greater Manchester Shared Services, that really helped us with clauses 4 to 10 to understand what it was BSI would be looking for when they came in to audit us.
Couple of more questions, then we'll move on and we can also pick them up at the end. The requirements, financial commitment, and any other impact on wider teams, digital service or the technical team. Did you need to rely on any of those for any of it?
There was obviously a financial cost to us engaging with Fortis, and obviously the auditing wasn't cheap. That was quite expensive. As for the wider teams, I think a lot of our policies were already in place and understood by the teams, so it was just a case of raising awareness of the new ones that we brought in or any changes that we put in specifically around ISO. But I think that the thing to do is make sure that you get buy-in from the very top, from your exec team, and then they cascaded down really to all the other managers within the trust, and we had great buy-in from our CTO and our CIO. So it was it wasn't down to just us to say, this is an IT system, because it's not an IT system as well. That's another thing to get across to everybody, is this is a information security thing, but it's not a digital project as such. It's for everyone to be aware of.
Yeah, and listening to that, the way you answered that question actually kind of resolves another question coming about any barriers to development and implementation. It's just, once you get that buy-in from the top, then it's probably easier for people to articulate that down.
Yeah, and that's one thing that they're really keen on, is that you do have that executive buy-in. In fact, one of our when they were doing the interviews, they would do security awareness interviews of random members of staff. But one of the mandated interviews was with a senior person within the organisation to get their spin on what they see ISO doing for the trust, and that really helps. That if it's understood at that exec level and they understand the benefits of it, then they cascade it down. So yeah, I think the thing with ISO for us was it was sort of made a trust objective as opposed to a digital objective. So the trust actually wanted it, and that really helps.
I'll do this last question now, and then I'll kind of move on, just conscious of time. That's all. And then again, we can pick up any questions. But there's an interesting this is a bit more detailed. This is related to other kind of frameworks related to, and ISO being security related. Do you have any enterprise architecture frameworks in place, such as COBIT or TOGAF?
Not currently, no.
Cool.
We also have CE and CE plus, but we don't use any of the other frameworks currently, no.
Okay. I'll come back to there's a couple of questions coming. I'll come back to them towards the end in case if we've got time. But we will respond to the questions on email anyway afterwards. So thanks, Andy. That was great and really interesting in terms of how we did that. As we said at the beginning, we were aware that from what Richard Pilkington had said at our event, that it was the dashboard was used to help support this initiative, and we thought it'd be a good opportunity to just share with those of you that have either got the dashboard and are thinking about doing the upgrade to the new version, or those of you who don't have one, just to give you a bit of a glimpse of what that new version looks like. As Andy said, they've got both sides now and they coexist alongside each other. We stepped into developing the new dashboard because we were coming under a lot of, not pressure, but we were being challenged by a number of our customers in terms of not just looking at IT assets. They were wanting to understand the nature of risk and visibility for other assets, whether they be medical devices, shadow, and Internet of Things. And the other thing was, we've already mentioned DSPT, but there's also an awareness that that's changing and is going to change, and we're going to move more towards CAP, we think, and therefore we need to be able to structure the data in the database that we have in order to be able to facilitate those things moving forwards and make sure that the dashboard is providing you with your local requirements of visibility and risk assurance, but also that you can meet those impacts from externally, whether it be reporting out to ICS or the centre, DSPT, cyber alerts, etc., etc. And that's why it kind of came into place. The timeline, for those of you who don't know, was this started back in 2017 when, just after WannaCry, if you remember that, we were asked by a trust in the East Midlands to develop something which would help them give a single pane of glass full visibility of all of their IT assets that were managed. That was, and we did that, and then we've gone on from there through a few nice kind of gateways, and we're now sitting with around 150 organisations using the dashboard across NHS England in the main. We partner with another organisation to do our medical device scanning. We know that there are other products available on. We are working on some interfaces into some of those those products as well to be able to bring that data in. And the new dashboard was released this year, earlier this year. These are the kind of things that we've been covering for quite some time now in terms of the dashboard. So full asset visibility and a whole lot of other things which I'm going to come on to. But the key thing is that we manage this on behalf of our customers. We provide this wrapper. That means we give bespoke reporting. All the support calls come via us. You'll see in a second that we don't hide the fact that we use Landsweeper for the active scanning of managed assets on the network, but we manage all of that for all of our customers going forwards. And then with the advent of the new dashboard, we brought in a whole lot of new features that we wanted to see, and gives me great pleasure to say that all of these are now in. We have about 50 customers that have done the upgrade, and as you know, those of you who've done it, you don't lose your existing Landsweeper instance, i.e. that dashboard that could have been there for several years, that stays in situ, and the new dashboard sits alongside it. And I'm going to cover a few of these aspects, but you'll pick up on things like integration into Microsoft MDE and a few of the things that we've brought in, which are really helping people get a much better picture of their security posture. So the new one runs in its own database. We still run it as an on-prem capability. We do that because we know if there is an outbreak of something not very nice, you probably will need to disconnect yourself from the internet. Not saying you would do that, but that's what happened last time, and we want to make sure you've got visibility. So we're taking that Landsweeper data. We work with these guys very closely, and that is effectively dumped into the database. We've got medical device information now coming in. Scenario is the solution that we can promote. We've got others now. We've also got interface into things like Sophos, and we're working on others such as Trend. Defender Endpoint is now, data's coming in, and we've got some interfaces about to be launched for things like Cisco DNA to take the data directly from that control point, and also from Rubrik. Again, Rubrik approached us and said, hey, we've got backup data, we've got a good implemented install base in the NHS, and could we bring that in? So we're working on that interface as well to be able to show you your aspects of your backup inventory. And this is the kind of view that those customers that have now got it are kind of benefiting from. So the old one sits in situ, we've now been able to do a lot more with the data. We were able to do a lot more with identifying risks, a lot more with analysing those risks, and a lot more in terms of making that data much more readily available. This is an overview page. You can see that we can pull out things like assets seen today, users seen today. We have no limit on the number of users or assets that we keep within this database. So you can have them for as long as you want. We've got the ability to pull out on this front page things like critical risk assets, critical risk software, move down the page, cyber alerts, and then software that needs to be updated, removed, and critical risk assets that are online today. That's actually an interesting point, because as you'll see as we go down, this one here is saying source Landsweeper main, but you will see as we go through with the show and tell that we've got source coming in from things like MDE. So those devices that are off network but are still connecting to MDE, then you'll be able to see those as well in the same view. Now, we constructed some very, very customizable ways of looking at the data. This is one of them. This is a customizable table. You can choose what you want to see literally by pinning in and out with various aspects. There's about 100 of these. They're getting added to on a week-by-week basis. So we get some very granular reporting, and as you do that, this view will change. You can then save that view for your own view, for your departmental view, save it as a read-only. We've got roles-based access in there, so the auditing bit that Andy spoke about, create a view for your auditor if you want to, and they can see it live. And it's, again, back to underpinning that reporting capability. This is live data. And then we've got detailed views supported by thumbnails, and we can look at those detailed views and we can see a lot of information. One of the challenges for the old dashboard was it was all tab-centric, and we couldn't show all of the information in concert with the device or devices in the same view. We can now do that. So in here, top information, we straight away hone in on last seen by data source, Landsweeper main, local scan, Sophos if it's applicable, if it's not, it won't be there, MDE, MDE, NHS tenant. Again, if you've got devices that are off network, you'll still be able to pull them into the dashboard and show them that they're there. It may be that you've got devices that have not been seen for 3 months, and those devices have gone through a normal cleanup process through AD, removed from your Landsweeper database, and then all of a sudden they reappear out somewhere outside in the field. They're still a risk. And then below that, more detailed information about those assets that you want to look at. So risk overview, what's in posture, what's not, and then details around those other aspects that are affecting it. We can then step through system overview, recommended actions, Windows updates, ironic today's Patch Tuesday, even down to things like pending reboot, software that's vulnerable on the device or devices, cyber alerts that are affecting it, and then all CVEs. Very, very detailed view around all of that. Now, when we're in this view, we might want to see that data, and we can very quickly do view in source. We want to get down to the core data, and we've got a choice of where we want to look when we look at that data. In this instance, we're going to look at it from Landsweeper, and we can launch the asset in the Landsweeper view. So the kind of view that Andy was kind of talking about earlier. So direct access to those assets that you need to get to very quickly. Running alongside those tabular views, we've got these wonderful insight views that we've created, and these are designed to give you a very quick view of your assets. This one we're looking at now is endpoint insights. As we travel through this show and tell, you'll see that they are all very similar, whatever we're looking at. And we can see that we can filter by organization, by department, by asset group, or by service group. Service group could be a department, or it could be a group that spans departments. Finance as an example. You could say it's A&E, you could say it's whatever you may be in terms of type of organization, but you can create those and then associate assets with those, associate an owner, a criticality. But within here, we get the ability to see very quickly the status, in this case, of our endpoints. You can see we've got desktops, laptop servers, you can see the OS, the patching, OS build, and then a whole load of other facets on the right-hand side, which a lot of this is done manually in lots of cases. And then we've got this great ability where we can filter them. We literally say, I want to see, in this case, MG not configured, and I want to see those where we're not configured and assets that have been seen today. I apply the filter, and it dynamically changes to show me just those assets. Here we are again, desktop servers, laptops, straight down to the detail. I could filter again if I wanted to, or I could remove the filters. I could go and say, show me those of these that have got out-of-date software, and it will go down again. And then behind this, I can do view asset data, and I can get to the asset list. These are pre-canned column-based reports that we've already created. And here again, if you want to filter these down, you can. Again, you can pop out, change those columns to get more down to more detail if you're doing an active search. But a whole lot of information there that's very, very, very vital to getting to understand what's going on with those assets. We've also now, as we said before, we've got the ability to see medical devices. And again, we have a unique kind of opportunity here, because most of the vendors that provide those solutions, some of them we're integrating with, start at a starting point which can be quite expensive. We have come in at a different point. What we're interested in here is asset and visibility for those medical devices. We're not interested in all of the bells and whistles at this point. So we plug in the data, bring the data in, we represent it in exactly the same tabular fields that you've been used to seeing so far. We can then look at the detail, when it was last scanned, by what's affecting it, CVEs, cyber alerts, risk overview. Again, we're interested in risk, posture, and assurance. We've then got an insight page, medical insights. Again, you can drive those column views from here. Again, you can see all the different types of devices you've got. Some of them are IoT, and then the various aspects that could affect them, including things like exploit probability, has it been exploited in the wild already, known exploits, etc., etc. Just mention the cyber thermometer. This is something that was introduced. It just gives you a pictorial representation of the level of risk associated with the view that you're looking at, everything or a specific view. And again, you can view asset data. In this case, you would go out to whichever feed is providing that data. We can look at software. Now, we've done a lot of work around software asset management and looking at the aspects related to software. So straight away in here, we can look at software with newer versions. That's on network or from vendor. Click through, see those where we've got new versions available. Again, alongside it, software out of support with CVE risk, with cyber alerts, exploit probability scores, etc., etc. Again, we can click through, filter, or go directly and view that asset data, and here's all that software data. We've also introduced the concept of normalizing the software. So normalize it, what is it? Is it from a particular vendor? But then alongside that, we've got the normalized publisher, and then you can see on to the right, type, category, browser, subcategory, and go down to a lot of detail about that. And this is really helping people with their kind of software management and asset management as well. Again, there's more detail about what, if you want to look at a particular piece of software, there's the thumbnail, and then there's a more detailed view. Again, risk overview, trending, what we're looking at here, CVEs, etc., etc. It's the same kind of logic, and then we can go out and then we can view those assets as we choose to. Now, one of the kind of precepts of this solution way back 6 years ago was the way in which we were able to handle cyber alerts, and that hasn't changed. So we take that feed in, we use our kind of cloud-based management console, and then each dashboard is polling usually on an hourly basis for any updates, whether they be from CVEs, EPSS, or cyber alerts. We've made some changes to this now. We now include all cyber alerts, whereas before they were just asset-based, so information only and asset-based. We've got a very quick overview in terms of what's going on with it. Again, you can change these columns if you want to. This is the default layout, and then you can get into the detail. So in the thumbnail here, we can see more information, what the criteria is, and then a timeline. We can go into the detailed information about that particular cyber alert. We can see where we are in terms of a progress bar, and were found, outstanding, resolved, excluded, not affected, i.e. they were already beyond the version that's been called out as the cyber alert. The severity and threat type, we've got graphing for timeline overall, found, resolved, all the detail about CVs, and then this got this. I think this piece here is a great little module. Software matches. This takes us back to Log4j when we had one version of Java which was affected, but it very quickly became known that there were other versions of Java which have gone end of life, but were embedded in other products. So this would have been found here. You can see very quickly other products that are related but not necessarily affected by the cyber alert. And then on the right hand side, information about remediation and what to do based on the advice from the various intelligence feeds. Vulnerabilities we treat in the same way. You've got an insight page. How severe are they? The top affecting vulnerabilities. Again, you can filter that down. You can then jump out, look at the vulnerability data in detail. look at all the aspects of that data, what the scoring looks like, and how it's going to affect you. And then kind of the last two bits that we've done a lot of work on to kind of implement some significant changes. One of the key aspects, again, that came online in my dashboard is the ability to help you with your DSPT submission. And in here now we have two ways of looking at that. You can now look at the entire DSPT requirement, so 1.11 to whatever it is now, and you can understand what it is, what your requirements are for your submission, what evidence is required. Are there any text inputs? And these are the sentences that you'll find in the spreadsheet. We now fill these in automatically, giving the relevant statements in terms of compliance. And then if you need to, you can then check on any other reports that might be available that could you maybe want to submit as well. And then if you need to, attach any documentation. So you can look at it that way, or you can look at it from a point of view of just those things that are where assets are required to be informed about, including medical devices in the DSPT, and look at it that way. So you've got two ways of looking at that. Once you've done that, include all your evidence, click save, it creates effectively a zip file, and then that is then ready for your submission. Within the new dashboard, we've got tagging and workflow, so you can tag any aspect. It gives it a unique reference. So if you wanted to tag things out into the support desk, then you can do that. That reference will then link back to the assets that need to be looked at. So a lot of workflow there. And the same thing in here, you can tag your submission components onto other colleagues if that's their requirement to do that. And then the last piece within here is new. This is called the KPI dashboard. We've been asked by a number of customers if we could create something. We knew that there was content in MDE that gives this kind of information, and also within things like BitSite. And we wanted, in the knowledge that your dashboard contains a lot of this information, we wanted to be able to kind of create something that gave you an ongoing view of your KPI. So this view here is overall risk. Your overall risk clearly needs to be aimed to be at 0. And in here, there's some certain information around the high level bit, server, desktop, laptop, medical devices, and everything else. And quite clearly, click on the time period. It will then give you a statement about your risk. Has it improved or has it declined? Green for improvement, red for if it's declined, what it was last week, the number of assets and what they are, and then a thumbnail trend line or a graph you can pop out, and then you can then export that out. And you can see down the left-hand side all the different aspects it covered. These are growing, and we'll add more. Here's one for MD onboarded, MD no exposure risk. Again, very detailed information which helps you understand your progress over time. So I'm kind of coming to the end of my kind of introduction to the new dashboard. Again, happy to take any questions about that or anything else that's come up for Andy. Got one here, Andy, if you're still with us. Hopefully you are.
I am.
How did you structure the request for funding on what was such a large project?
No idea. That's well above my pay grade, unfortunately.
Okay, we'll take that one offline, and we can maybe try and find some answers to that.
Yeah, I can always ask.
We can come back. Yeah, and I think the second part of this question is a good one. I think it's probably one that we'll probably come back in relation to that. Is why go all the way to ISO 27001 when you can get by with the SPT? I think you probably covered some of those in some of your responses, but I think the key thing is this is ongoing, isn't it? This is an ongoing assessment. It's not just a self-certification.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, the ongoing bit and the external verification as well. You know, it just gives you that added assurance that you're doing things right. And
yeah, absolutely. I can't see any more questions coming in, but obviously, if there's anything that comes in after we kind of finish in a second, then we'll answer those questions. If anybody wants to get in contact with us, there's a few sets of contact details on there, whether it's about your existing dashboard, whether it's about the upgrade process, whether it's somebody that hasn't got it and wants to talk about it, medical devices, or more information about the ISO journey, then please get in contact with us. Great news is we finished a bit earlier than we expected, so you get 20 minutes back, so that's good. We always like that. Again, as you exit, there is a small survey. If you've got time to fill in, it really does help us to shape these going forwards and kind of give a better approach to them as we kind of try and help out and just communicate. The question about the dashboard that's just come in, I'll take that one offline and I'll respond to you by email, if that's okay. But yeah, if there's no more questions, again, you know where we are if you think of anything, and get in touch. If not, we'll close it off now. And again, thank you for attending, and a big thank you to Andy for his slides. Thanks, mate.
No problem.
Okay, take care. Cheers, everybody. Bye bye.